but it never forgets the ones whose faith reshaped the world. Before empires collapsed, before Persia fell, before the Tigris was crossed by men who feared nothing but God, there was one name: Saad ibn Abi Waqqas.
Umar ibn al-Khattab, when reports reached him in succession about the treacherous attacks launched by Persian forces against the Muslims. In the Battle of the Bridge, 4,000 martyrs were lost in a single day, and the people of Iraq were breaking their covenants and treaties that were binding upon them. So he decided to go himself to lead the Muslim armies in a decisive battle against Persia. He set out with a group of his companions, leaving Ali ibn Abi Talib, may God honor him, as his successor in Medina. But he had hardly departed from the city when some of his companions thought he should return and appoint someone else from among the companions for this mission. Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf championed this opinion, declaring that risking the life of the commander of the faithful in such a manner, while Islam was living through its decisive days, was an unwise course of action. Umar ordered the Muslims to gather for consultation, and the call went out, "Al-Salah Jamia," prayer is gathering. Ali ibn Abi Talib was summoned and moved with some of the people of Medina to where the commander of the faithful and his companions were. The assembly converged on what Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf had called for, and the assembly decided that Umar should return to Medina and choose another commander from among the Muslims to face the Persians. The commander of the faithful accepted this opinion and returned, asking his companions, "So, whom do you think we should send to Iraq?" They fell silent for a moment, thinking. Then Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf exclaimed, "I have found him." Umar said, "Who is he?" Abd al-Rahman said, "The lion in his den, Saad ibn Malik al-Zuhri." The Muslims endorsed this choice, and the commander of the faithful sent for Saad ibn Malik al-Zuhri, who is Saad ibn Abi Waqqas, and appointed him as the governor of Iraq and commander of the army. So, who is this lion in his den? Who is this man that when he would approach the Prophet while he was among his companions, the Prophet would welcome him and jest, saying, "This is my maternal uncle. Let a man be pleased with his maternal uncle." Indeed, he is Saad ibn Abi Waqqas. His grandfather was Wuhayb ibn Manaf, the paternal uncle of Lady Amina, the mother of the Messenger of God, peace be upon him. He embraced Islam at the age of 17, and his conversion was early. He narrates about himself, saying, "A day came upon me when I was the third in Islam," meaning he was the third among those who hastened to Islam. In the earliest days when the Prophet, peace be upon him, began speaking about the one God and the new religion whose glad tidings he brought, even before the Prophet, peace be upon him, took the house of Al-Aqam as a sanctuary for himself and his companions who had begun to believe in him, Saad ibn Abi Waqqas had already stretched out his right hand to the Messenger of God, pledging allegiance. And indeed, the books of history and biography tell us that he was among those who entered Islam through Abu Bakr and by his hand. It is likely that he declared his Islam publicly with those who declared it through Abu Bakr's persuasion, they being Uthman ibn al-Awam, al-Zubair ibn al-Awam, Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf, and Talha ibn Ubaidallah. This does not negate his precedence in accepting Islam secretly. And Saad ibn Abi Waqqas possessed many virtues he could boast in and take pride in. Yet he only boasted of two great things among those virtues. First, he was the first to shoot an arrow in the path of God. Second, he was the only one for whom the Prophet ransomed with his own parents, saying to him on the day of Uhud, "Shoot, Saad, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you." Indeed, he would boast of these two immense blessings, and would constantly thank God for them, saying, "By God, I am the first man among the Arabs to shoot an arrow in the path of God." And Ali ibn Abi Talib said, "I never heard the Prophet, peace be upon him, ransom anyone with his parents, except Saad. For I heard him say on the day of Uhud, 'Shoot, Saad, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you.'" Saad was counted among the bravest knights of the Arabs and Muslims. He had two weapons, his spear and his prayer. If he shot at an enemy in war, he would hit his mark, and if he supplicated to God, his prayer would be answered. He and his companions with him would attribute this to the Prophet's supplication for him. For one day, when the Prophet, peace be upon him, saw in him what he pleased and gladdened his eye, he made for him this memorable supplication: "O God, make his aim accurate, and answer his supplication." Thus he became known among his brothers and companions as having a supplication like a sharp sword, and he himself knew this about his own affair, so he would never supplicate against anyone without entrusting his matter to God.
All the while, Saad did not care, nor would he sell his faith and religion for anything, even if that thing was his mother's life. And when she was nearing death, some of his family took him to her to bid her farewell, hoping his heart would soften when he saw her in the throes of death. Saad went and saw a scene that would melt stone, yet his faith in God and his messenger had surpassed all stone, all steel. He brought his face close to his mother and cried out to her to hear, "Know, by God, O my mother, if you had 100 souls, and they departed one by one, I would not abandon this religion of mine for anything. So eat if you wish, or do not eat." Saad's mother relented from her resolute, and revelation descended, mentioning Saad's stance and endorsing it, saying, "But if they endeavor to make you associate with me that which you have no knowledge, do not obey them. Is he not truly the lion in his den?"
وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيَّ ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ فَأُنَبِّئُكُم بِمَا كُنتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ.
Therefore, let the commander of the faithful raise the banner of Al-Qadisiyah in his hand, and let him confront the Persians gathered in more than 100,000 trained fighters, armed with the most formidable equipment and weapons the earth knew at that time, led by the most skilled commanders of war then and the most cunning minds. Yes, to these in their formidable legions, Saad goes out with only 30,000 fighters. In their hands are spears, mere spears, but in their hearts is the will of the new religion, with all that represents of faith, vigor, and a rare, dazzling yearning for death and for martyrdom. And the armies are set to meet. But no, the armies have not yet met, and Saad is there awaiting the advice and guidance of the commander of the faithful, Umar. And here is Umar's letter to him, ordering him to proceed to Al-Qadisiyah, for it is the gate to Persia. And he casts upon his heart words filled with light and guidance. O Saad ibn Wahib, let it not deceive you concerning God that it is said, the maternal uncle of the messenger and his companion, for God has no kinship with anyone except through obedience to him. People, their noble and lowly, are equal before God. God is their Lord, and they are his servants. They differ in rank through piety, and they rejoice in what is with God through obedience.
So look to the matter you saw the messenger of God, peace be upon him, upon from the time he was sent until he left us, and adhere to it, for it is the way. Then he says to him, Write to me of all your conditions. How are you camped? Where is your enemy relating to you? And make me through your frequent reports to me, as if I am looking at you. Saad writes to the commander of the faithful, describing everything to him, even specifying for him the position and place of each soldier. Saad descends upon Al-Qadisiyah, and the Persians gather army and populace as they had never gathered before. Command of the Persians is taken by their most famous and dangerous commander, Rustam. Saad writes to Umar, and the commander of the faithful writes back to him, Do not be daunted by what you hear from them, nor by what they bring against you. Seek help from God and rely on Him. Send to him a man of insight, opinion, and endurance to call him to God. Write to me every day. Saad writes again to the commander of the faithful, saying, Rustam has camped at Sabat, brought forth the horses and elephants, and advanced upon us. Umar replies to him, affirming and advising. Saad, the intelligent, brave knight, maternal uncle of the messenger, the forerunner to Islam, veteran of battles and campaigns, whose sword never falters, whose spear never misses, stands at the head of his army in one of history's greatest battles, standing as if he were an ordinary soldier. Neither the arrogance of command nor the pride of leadership causes him to rely excessively on his own opinion, but rather he turns to the commander of the faithful in Medina, with vast distances between them, sending him a letter every day, exchanging with him, while the great battle is on the verge of breaking out, consultation and opinion. For Saad knows that Umar in Medina does not issue verdicts alone, nor decide alone. Rather, he consults those around him from among the Muslims and the choicest companions of the Messenger of God. And Saad, despite all the circumstances of war, does not want to deprive himself nor his army of the blessing and benefit of consultation, especially when among its pillars is Umar, the great Imam. Saad carries out Umar's instruction, sending to Rustam, the Persian commander, a group of his companions to call him to God and to Islam. The dialogue between them and the Persian commander lengthens, and finally they conclude their talk with him, as one of them says, God has chosen us to bring out through us whom He wills, from the worship of idols to monotheism, from the narrowness of this world to its expanse, from the injustice of religions to the justice of Islam. Whoever accepts this from us, we accept from him and leave him to his affairs, and whoever refuses, we fight him until we fulfill God's promise. Rustam says, And what is God's promise that He has made to you? That companion replies, Paradise for our shaheeds and victory for our living. The delegation returns to the Muslim commander, Saad, to inform him that it is war.
Saad's eyes fill with tears. He wished the battle had been delayed a little or had come a little earlier, for at that time his illness had intensified and his strength had diminished. Boils filled his body until he could not even sit, let alone mount his steed and plunge into a battle of extreme ferocity and severity. If the battle had come before he fell ill and weakened, or if it had been delayed until he recovered and was healed, then he would have performed greatly. But now, however, no, for the messenger of God, peace be upon him, taught them not to say, if only, lau, because this word opens the work of Satan, and the strong believer never lacks resourcefulness, nor is he ever incapable. Then the lion in his den arose and stood before his army, delivering a sermon, commencing his address with the noble verse, that the land of paradise is inherited by my righteous servants. After finishing his sermon, he led the army in the Duhr prayer, then faced his troops, proclaiming the takbir, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The takbirs resounded, and those proclaiming them joined in. He extended his arm like a penetrating arrow, pointing towards the enemy,
and cried out to his soldiers, "Forward with the blessing of God." He climbed, bearing up against himself and his pains, to the balcony of the house where he was staying and using as his command center. On the balcony he sat, leaning against his chest upon a cushion. The door of his house was open. The easiest attack by the Persians on the house would deliver him into their hands, alive or dead. But he was neither terrified nor afraid. His boils were bursting and bleeding, but he was occupied from them, for from the balcony he was proclaiming the takbir and shouting. He issued orders to these, "Advance towards the right flank," to those, "Plug the gaps in the left flank." "Forward, O Mughira," behind them, "O Jarir," "Strike, O Nu'man," "Charge, O Ash'ath," and you, O Qa'qa, "Advance, O men of the right flank." And his voice, brimming with strength of resolve and hope, made of every single soldier an entire army. And the ranks clashed, pushing, striving, endeavoring, sacrifice, and their hearts fled in defeat after seeing the fall of their commander and their finest soldiers. And the Muslim army pursued them to Nahawand, then to Al-Madain, which they entered to carry away the Ark of Khosrow and his crown as spoils and conquest. And in the battle of Al-Madain, Saad performed greatly. The Battle of Al-Madain occurred nearly 2 years after the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, during which continuous skirmishes occurred between the Persians and Muslims until all the forces and remnants of the Persian army gathered in Al-Madain itself, prepared for a final decisive stand. Saad realized that time would be on the side of his enemies, so he decided not to grant them this advantage. But how could he do that with the Tigris River between him and Al-Madain in the season of its flooding and strong current? Here is a situation that proves Saad truly is, as described by Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf, the lion in his den. And indeed, Saad's faith and determination shine in the face of danger, defying the impossible with immense valor. And so Saad issued his order to the army to cross the Tigris. He ordered for a search for a ford in the river that would enable this crossing. Finally, they found a place whose crossing was not without grave dangers. And before the army began the crossing operation, Commander Saad thought about the necessity of securing a landing place on the opposite bank where the enemy was stationed. So then he prepared 2 battalions. The first, they called it the Battalion of Horrors, and Saad put Asim ibn Amr in command of it. The second, named the Silent Battalion, and Saad put Al-Qa'qa ibn Amr in command. The soldiers of these 2 battalions had to brave horrors to secure a safe place on the opposite bank for the army crossing after them, and they performed their task with astonishing skill. And Saad's plan that day succeeded with a success historians reserve for him, a success that amazed Saad ibn Abi Waqqas himself and amazed his comrade in battle, Salman al-Farsi, who began slapping one hand with the other in astonishment and delight, saying, "Indeed, Islam is new. By God, the seas have been tamed for them, just as the land has been tamed. By the one in whose hand is Salman's soul, they will emerge from it in waves, just as they entered it in waves."
And so it was. Just as they plunged into the Tigris River in waves, they emerged from it in waves. They did not lose a single soldier, nor did they even lose the spirit of one horse. A cup fell from one of the fighters, and it distressed him to be the only one among his comrades to lose something. So there he was in the water searching for it, and his companions embraced him to help him retrieve it, and a high wave pushed him to where some of those crossing could pick it up. And one of the historical narrations describes to us the magnificence of the scene as they crossed the Tigris, saying, "Saad ordered the Muslims to say, 'Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel.' Sufficient for us is God, and He is the best disposer of affairs." Then he urged his horse into the Tigris, and the people urged in after him. Not one of them lagged behind. They moved in it as if they were moving on the surface of the earth until they filled the space between the 2 banks, and the surface of the water could no longer be seen from the multitude of waves of horsemen and infantry. And the people began conversing as they walked on the surface of the earth, as if they were conversing on the surface of the earth, due to the sense of tranquility, security, trust in God's command, victory, promise, and support they felt. And the day Omar appointed Saad as governor of Iraq, he went about building and developing the city of Kufa. And he established the foundations of Islam in the vast, wide lands. One day, the people of Kufa complained about him to the commander of the faithful. Their rebellious, restless nature overcame them, so they made their laughable claim. They said, "Saad does not pray properly." Saad laughed heartily and said, "By God, I lead them in the prayer of the messenger of God. I elongate the first 2 rakats and shorten the last 2. Omar summoned him to Medina, and he was not angry, rather he answered his call immediately. And after a while, Omar decided to send him back to Kufa. Saad replied, laughing, "Do you command me to return to people who claim that I do not pray properly?" And he chose to remain in Medina. And when the commander of the faithful, Omar, may God be pleased with him, was assassinated, he chose from the companions of the messenger, peace be upon him, 6 men to be entrusted with the matter of choosing the new caliph, saying, he had chosen 6 men the messenger of God, peace be upon him, was pleased with when he died. And among them was Saad ibn Abi Waqqas. Indeed, it appears from Omar's final words that if he were to choose one of the companions for the caliphate, he would have chosen Saad for it, for he said to his companions, as he advised and guided them, "If Saad assumes it, then that is it, and if someone else assumes it, let him seek Saad's support." And life extended for Saad, and the great fitna, civil strife, came, and he abstained from it. Indeed, he ordered his family and children not to inform him of any of its news. One day, necks craned towards him, and his nephew, Hashim ibn Utbah ibn Abi Waqqas, went to him and said, "O uncle, here are 100,000 swords that affirm you as the most unjust of this matter." Saad replied, "I want from 100,000 swords 1 sword. If a believer is struck with it, it does nothing, and if a disbeliever is struck with it, it kills him." His nephew understood his purpose and left him in his seclusion and peace. And when the matter was settled for Muawiyah and the reins of power were firmly in his hand, he asked Saad, "Why did you not fight with us?" He answered him, "I passed through a dark wind, and I said, and I urged my mountain on until it cleared from me." Muawiyah said, "There is no in the book of God," but God said, "And if 2 factions among the believers should fight, then make settlement between the 2. But if one of them oppresses the other, then fight against the one that oppresses until it returns to the ordinance of Allah." And he was not with the aggressor against the just, nor with the just against the aggressor. And Saad ibn Abi Waqqas answered, saying, "I would not fight a man," meaning Ali ibn Abi Talib, to whom the messenger of God, peace be upon him, said, "You are to me as Harun was to Musa, except there is no prophet after me." And one day, in the year 54 of the Hijrah, having passed the age of 80, he was in his house at Al-Aqiq, preparing to meet God. His son narrates his final moments, saying, "My father's head was in my lap as he was dying, and I cried. He said, 'What makes you cry, my son? God will never punish me, and I am from the people of paradise.'" The firmness of his faith was not weakened even with the dread of death or its tremor. And the messenger, peace be upon him, had given him glad tidings, and he believed in the truthfulness of the messenger, so he was the most confident of people in faith. If that is the case, then why fear? God will never punish me, and I am from the people of paradise. And he wanted to meet God carrying the most beautiful and splendid memento he had gathered from his religion, his connection to his religion, and his bond with his prophet. So he pointed to his storage chest. They opened it, then they took out from it an old worn cloak. He ordered his family to shroud him in it, saying, "I met the polytheists on the day of Badr, and I have saved it for this day." Indeed, that tattered garment was no longer merely a garment, but had become a banner flying over a long, lofty life, lived by its owner as a faithful, truthful, courageous man. and on the shoulders of men he was carried to Medina to take his place in peace beside a pure great company of his companions who had preceded him to God, and their toiling bodies found their haven in the soil and earth of al-Baqi. Farewell, Saad. Farewell, hero of Al-Qadisiyah, conqueror of Al-Madain, extinguisher of the worshipped fire in Persia forever.
Stories like this are not meant to be forgotten. They are meant to be remembered and lived. If you believe history deserves truth, faith deserves depth, and heroes deserve meaning, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share this story. Because the past only lives when we carry it forward.